Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. Hello, listener. It really is excellent to have you here. If you're a regular listener, big bloody thank you for choosing this pod to support your business journey. It is an absolute gift for me as a creator to have your ears. And if there's anything I can do for you to ensure you are subscribed and have left the pod a review, please do let me know, because those things mean so much to the growth of this show. And the more we grow, well, the more of this good content that'll be coming for your ears. And if you're new here, welcome. You are in for a treat of real feels about the journey of building a business at any level. Micro, side hustle, medium, small, beyond, all to ensure more of us feel seen, heard, and inspired about the journey so that we can keep on going. What an absolute gem of a human this woman is that you're about to hear from today. Viv Conway is one part of the force behind the brand Girls Get Off that if you haven't heard of before, well, you're welcome. We cover a lot of ground here in this chat and so many of our favorite areas in this community, like all the mistakes you make in the process of starting a business, particularly when you're a little bit younger, exploring different business ideas to find your fit without fear, embracing the awks feeling of putting yourself out there and getting to the other side of it, the importance of quote unquote acting as if, that's a little hook there from me about what's coming up because I know you're really going to love that tidbit, finding and embracing your unique brand voice with confidence and with gut instinct, and embracing the human side of customer insights, the power of standout marketing for product-based businesses, why you shouldn't always jump to outsourcing for something that's new to you, the value of like industry mentors and relationship building, collaboration over competition, cash flow and profit learnings on the go. We do get into some really great chat and insights about cash flow challenges, overdrafts, where to go, what to do, all of the things. So stick around for that. And the personal challenge of trying to rest for the sake of your business growth and worrying that you won't be rested enough to achieve what you want to. Geez, I feel that feel very deep in my bones. If you're facing a sprint or feeling a little overwhelmed at what's in front of you in your business journey, this is going to give you exactly what you need. Let's get into the chat. I'm here with Viv Conway, co-founder of women's sexual wellness brand Girls Get Off. Girls Get Off is a brand that puts shame over big O's, that's orgasms for those playing at home, in the bin. It banishes the seedy sex shops designed with only men's pleasure in mind and makes talking to your friends about pleasure normal and fun, not weird. It's a business designed by mates who decided it was time for a woman to feel empowered about all things pleasure. And they've created a brand that gives you a giggle with their unhinged Instagram posts and products to give you all the pleasure behind closed doors, with a mission to help every woman who interacts with Girls Get Off to walk away feeling supported, confident, and empowered so that you can chase your pleasure and feel confident talking to your partner about what ticks your boxes. I noticed the pun, and what doesn't. Featured on news.com, Mark Boris's incredible podcast, The Mentor, at South by Southwest in Sydney, and more. Viv and her co-founder Joe are building a phenomenal business through marketing tactics that get noticed and get past the outdated scales of what's appropriate to advertise, building Girls Get Off to an impressive 7-figure women's sexual wellness brand selling internationally. Viv believes that shame needs to be taken out of female masturbation because seriously, who made it shameful to admit to anyway? It stinks of patriarchy to me, and there is no greater awakening than getting to know yourself inside and out. She's no stranger to the world of business, having previously built and sold an activewear brand and a social media agency. So I cannot wait to hear the story of building this epic business. Viv, welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Thank you so much for having me. What a bio, what an intro. Wow.
Mate, what a story.
I don't have to say anything now.
Not at all, but I do hugely recommend that. I mean, maybe like wait to the end of this episode, listener, because like stay with me here. But at some point, go on Instagram, go to the Girls Get Off page and just watch the video of Bondi and making people dance for a vibrator. I have watched it over and over and over again. The girl in the second dancer who bangs that leg up on the bar and cranks it, I adore her.
White jacket. So when she came and danced, I was like, we've hit the jackpot. It was in that moment I was like, this is going to go viral. This is going to kick off. And I'm like, here's your vibrator. Here's your vibrator. And in real life, she just kept dancing and she just kept going. And then she like whacks her leg up on that railing and she just keeps going. And I ended up hunting her down online and taking her out for lunch. I was like, you made that video. Yeah, she's a legend. She's actually a journo, which is so great.
I love everything about that. See, business, you never know what situations you're going to end up in and who you're going to end up having lunch with.
And it was Mother's Day and she was going for a walk with her mum. So she actually gave the vibrator to her mum. So I bought her like plenty more toys that she could use herself. It was so good.
I knew there'd be even more story behind that, but it is fantastic. And those marketing tactics are something I definitely want to chat about as we get into it. But before we go too far down that road, how do you think your business partner, co-founder Jo, might describe you?
Oh, hard-hitting questions straight off the bat. How would Jo describe me? I think she would say that I have a lot of grit and hardworkingness. I think she would agree that we're often on the same wavelength. That's something that Jo and I are very different, but we're also on the same wavelength in terms of where we want to head. So we're quite different in the way that we might approach a situation, where I'm more of like an activator, if you've done those like Gallup Strengths Finder things, which is so true. I don't think things through. I just start and I just do it, whereas she's very opposite and she's very deliberate and strategic, so she'll really think things through. So I think she wouldn't use the words, but she might say that I'm a little bit rip, shit and bust. And something to that effect. And I think hopefully she'd just say that I was a generally nice person. That's what I'd say about her. So I think I'd get the same back.
Oh, I really, really love that. Just rip into it and get it done. Like, there's definitely a part of me, like I can out-strategize myself into things. And so like my innate sense is to just rip in and see what happens.
And look, there's been many situations where I get halfway through a project or halfway anything, whether it's business or just personal or like, I don't know, unpacking the car or something. And I realize like, you haven't done this properly. You could have saved half the amount of time, but I'm already started. I'm in too deep, you know?
I do know. This is why I'm very, very lucky. My partner is a logistical genius. And so when it comes to moving houses and like trying to fit things into a space, I'm like, please take this, because it's just going to be chaos and the door slam shut if you try to get me to do this by myself. So some good characteristics there, and grit in particular for business, just such an important aspect. But Girls Get Off, an incredible brand that you've built. But before that, who were you?
So I actually studied food science of all things at uni. So I sort of went to uni thinking that I wanted to be a pharmacist. I was like, oh yeah, I'd like a bit of chemistry. And initially I thought I want to own pharmacies and I want to go down that path. But I think I probably could have worked out a little bit earlier that I had this like business swing on everything, you know, like I didn't actually want to be a pharmacist. I failed chemistry pretty quickly. And then, went down the food science path. I ended up starting the sportswear brand while I was at uni and went out and got a real job, as I like to call it, and worked as the quality manager in a Deer Co-Products factory. And then from there, started the agency soon after that, because people were asking so many questions about how I'd grown followings and a community on Instagram with the sportswear brand. So it sort of evolved one into the next.
Tell me a little more about the sportswear brand. I find that fascinating that you were doing that while you were studying. And I think a lot about, things like product sourcing and, like that's, when you think I started a sportswear, it's like there's so much that goes into that. Like as a young person in uni and doing all that, where did you get started and what was the experience like?
Just imagine someone who knew nothing. Like I am talking nothing. I didn't even know anyone else with a business. I think throughout my university journey, I must have been second year when I started there. I think in third year, I then made like 2 other mates who had businesses. Like I was clueless. So the way that it started was I saw some tights and some leggings on Instagram that were like kind of colorful and sort of patterned. And I messaged the account and it was all in Spanish. And I said, do you sell these? And they said, oh, we only do wholesale. You've got to buy 12 pairs. And I was like, all right, I'll buy 12 then. I'm sure I can sell them. And so I bought these tights. I had to buy 12 of them out of Colombia. I think they speak Spanish in Colombia. This is going to make me seem really ignorant. That's probably quite embarrassing.
You're in the right place. Don't worry.
The mistakes that I made with that business, like I remember crying at the Western Union one day because I had to like wire money to this person in Colombia. I thought, A, I'm going to be scammed. And then like B, I think I'd missed the cutoff. And I'm like, that means they're not going to arrive. And I've already sort of pre-sold them, like all these dramas. At one stage, I didn't have a ruler. And I was like figuring out what size to make these stickers. And I just Googled a ruler, like life-size ruler. And like, honestly, you name it, I've done the mistake. And in terms of product sourcing, yeah, honestly, it was all over Instagram. I remember I gave an influencer a pair of tights, the ones she wanted, and I can't even believe that I did this. I gave her this pair of tights. It was the only pair that I had in stock. And I was like, I'll just give it to her anyway. Like that, she'll bring people to the site. And I would have had like 100 or so messages. I would have had thousands of people to the website, and they were all obviously after that pair. And, you know, meanwhile, I was washing dishes at a hotel for like my part-time job as well. And I was like, oh, what's going on? And then like, face palm, like in terms of stock, oh, that would have been a good thing to think through. So yeah, she's been a journey.
That is outstanding. And you're like, yeah, you look at that now and go, benefit of hindsight. But like when you're in the moment with these things, you just got to whack it out there.
I didn't even know that like duties were a thing. So when I'd like scrape together all this money to buy the initial, yeah, it must have been like second or third order, scrape together all this money to like buy stock. And then it gets to the border and it's like, oh, you've got to pay an extra $300 or something to get into the country. And I'm like, I don't have that, you know. Mom, please help me. I'll pay you back. I promise. Yeah. Classic.
Duties and taxes and things like that. I know I've been exploring in the background, in and amongst all the other things that I do, because, you know, once one business, then why not 15?
Yeah.
Like, just go for it. But I've been exploring this product-based business for a formula that I've been having created, and like starting to do the calculations and things. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be really well organized with this. And I'm like going through like, yeah, okay, when the time is right to hit go on this, which could be 1 year, it could be 3. Oh, this is what I'm going to be prepared for. And then it's like, oh no, like there is, I think I was on a podcast once and someone talked to me about getting whacked with a huge tax bill and a duties bill as it came, and I was like, oh shit. So I was like, quick Google duties. I was like, oh my God, that's basically the same amount as I'm spending on product again. Like you don't know these things until you start.
No, it's all just riding the roller coaster. And I, even in the hardest moments, and I still now think like one day I'm going to have a laugh about this. Like the time I was crying in Western Union and the lady had to pass me the tissues under those like safety barrier things. Like, you know, when you go to a service station after hours and they pass you the items through the little hole thing. So she's like awkwardly passing them through, and I was like, this is so embarrassing. It was exam time as well, and I just remember thinking, this is going to be a funny moment in the future. You've just got to embrace it, you know?
And here we are laughing
about it. Happy days.
So you walked away from that. Like, talk to me about that experience, making the decision to walk away from something once you've grown it.
Well, to be honest, the sportswear brand was all well and good, and it taught me a lot of things, but I also then started working full-time, training for an Ironman, and also starting to build the social media agency because, you know, we like doing multiple things at once. So the sportswear brand actually sort of took a bit of a pause, and then I ended up selling that to someone who wanted to do something different, and I had sort of the following there, the stock, and that was all sort of ready to go. So yeah, that's why I walked away from that one. And then in terms of the agency, the reason I walked away from that was because Girls Get Off got my attention, and we started building that and quickly realized that having both businesses was not going to be sustainable. So I very quickly found out how to sell that to someone who found that very valuable too.
That's incredible. And I think with service-based industries in particular, it's pretty tough to balance anything service-based with building something else because there's just so many variables, dealing with clients, forecasting to try to get clients, delivering on the work that you've got for them. It's a pretty challenging gig.
I know so many business owners and friends who, you know, they'll be in the service space and then they flick to product, and then the product people are like, I'm flicking to service. And it's like this little grass is greener effect sort of happening to people. But I know that I am product through and through. I remember one New Year's, I was at a festival and I was like, I still had my biggest client, which was another music festival. And I'd be like to my friends, 6 p.m, give me 2 seconds. And I'd like run out of the mosh pit, post what I needed to on like stories and feed, and then like run back into the mosh pit and find my friends. And I think for me and the person that I am, the emotional load that running a service business comes with. That's tougher for me than product. I feel like product, yeah, you still have, obviously people when you're keeping people happy and building a community, but that's very different to service where you can't replicate you. Well, you can get different staff and specialists, but to the level that I'd grown it, people were still wanting my input into things, or I was still like fixing a lot of the larger problems should they arise.
Really interesting. I felt quite triggered but interested when you said the emotional side of service-based industry.
Huge.
Because for me that translated as, you are constantly thinking about the people, because you build relationships with these people, of course, in order to gain their trust, to show them what you're made of, to get their business. And so you have this connection with them. They're almost like you really care about their opinion about you as well, and their opinion about the work that you're putting forward for them, what they may or may not say as a word of mouth piece to other clients or other people in the industry. There is a lot of personal emotion built into those relationships.
Where I was sitting, like in terms of social media specifically, I found that and we went through a lot of different phases with the agency. Like initially we started out with account management. Then we realized that actually the people who get the most out of their socials are the ones that do it for themselves. So we sort of flipped to like a workshop and courses model. And that's all well and good. But the reality is that people don't actually want that. It's like what they need, but that's not actually what they want. And so what they want is someone to do it for them. But then what you have to charge to make your business a business, but then also so that they get value out of it, is all good when you're dealing with bigger companies. But when you're dealing with smaller companies, that can be more challenging, and the margins are, there's not as much room to move, and the value that they get out of it is directly related to the sales more so than like community building or just general awareness, because they're, they want to get on the shelf of somewhere or have a particular perception of the brand. So yeah, I felt that I'm managing all these socials for all these different businesses, and it's so much of a responsibility because they're looking to you to drive all this revenue. And then I've now flicked to a spot where I just manage the social. I don't even manage the socials fully. I only do a little bit of it. Joe does a lot, but it's just for one business. And there's heaps of other stuff that happen. But going from 10 to 15 clients to then down to just doing it for one business, there's a lot more clarity. And I like the focus there too.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And you said there, when girls get off, got your attention. So talk to me a little bit about that seed. So the seed of this idea, the development of this idea, take me back to that moment where you're like, oh, I think we could build something here.
Yeah, so Joe, my business partner, had an e-commerce business which was personalized cookies. So I don't know, there was a trend at the time, like sort of cookies with fondant on them. They're still around and it's got different words. So she had all these like funny sayings on them. And so we knew each other from working together. I think we'd taken some content or something for her, and we knew we were always on the same wavelength. We wanted to work together. So we'd actually been looking at different options in general of businesses that would sort of tick our boxes in terms of, could we leverage socials? Could we make it really fun? All those types of things. And we had toyed around with a few different ideas. The first idea was actually an idea to, I'll give a bit of context. When I was at university, the drinking decisions, in the alcohol that you bought was all based around like dollars per standard. Do you know what I mean? Like cheapest. I'm drinking 1.25 litre bottles of scrumpy cider from a plastic bottle, like that's what I was going for. And a couple of years later, when my sister was at uni, I noticed that people they were spending $27 for a 10-pack of RTDs, which I know that would be cheap in Aussie, but that is an expensive amount compared to the $8 bottle of cider that I was buying. So these uni kids are now spending like triple the price, and they're buying these cans because of the brand. And the brand wasn't even that good. And I was like, that is the first time I've ever seen students, of all people, make an alcohol purchasing decision based off of brand. Like that's huge. And that's when everyone's taking photos as well. Like that's when you take your photos, is when you're drinking it, when you've got a can in your hand. And so we identified that, okay, there's an opportunity there where we could come up with something really fun. And we actually came up with, we wanted to do well-branded goon sack, like cask wine. And so we were going to call it Humble Grape Award-Free Wine. And our idea was that no one, like when you're young, you don't know what good wine tastes like anyway. So let's just make it fun. And we realized quite quickly that we're going to need a bit more cash to launch an alcohol brand. And there's also a lot of advertising restrictions, more so than we have now. And thank God we didn't, because for any Kiwis listening or Aussies now, the Pals brand probably launched like 6 weeks after we sort of put that idea to rest. And we were like, thank God we didn't try and compete with goon sack versus like a really nice tasting RTD. So we parked that, and we had 3,000 boxes in Joe's garage for a while. But as we kept talking, lockdown happened in New Zealand, and she said to me, why don't we start selling sex toys? Same thing. It was like, sex toys are trending in general, but in terms of making a buying decision, you've either got to go to the weird shop down the road, and the one down the road from our house, you walk straight into a sex swing, or you go online. And we were clicking online, we were having a look. It's like toys for her, 800 different types, and it's like Dong Blaster 3000. Like, it's a little bit freaky. It's not like choosing a movie either. You don't know necessarily what you want, or what's that for, or like, oh my God, like, does this make me weird or uncomfortable? I don't know how to feel about this. And then in addition to that, so not only was the customer experience not there, and not like every other experience that we had as women, like you look at your skincare, you look at literally anything else you buy online or how you find out about products. The second piece to that was the reason that the sex toys were trending was not because anyone was marketing them properly. Like, there was a few reviews that had gone viral in the States on Amazon, or there was a Satisfier in New Zealand that had kicked off because I think Emily wrote some article about it, but no one was actually just marketing them like any other product. So it was sort of twofold. It was like, okay, we can have fun with this and market this, and also the customer journey can be changed. But I think we've also very quickly found out that actually being for the gals has been something we've always just been very passionate about, but never really articulated. So it's been just a blessing as well to then be able to facilitate the space to chat with people, help them get curious about their pleasure, and like just change the lives of people, which has just been epic.
I just love how exploratory that story
Yeah,
is.
that was such a long ramble.
Oh my gosh, not at all. First of all, I think, listener will know because they listen to this podcast, but I can go on for plenty. So like tangent away, because that is where the goal is. But it's so exploratory the way you have approached business. And I think that's such a healthy takeaway from so many stories that gets missed, which is, we do start random things, and then random things lead to random things. We were chatting off air before, like, tell me your story. And I'm like, well, I've done this random thing, and then I did this random thing, and then none of that's really linked. But now here I am doing this thing that's kind of linked, and I'll probably do something else in 5 minutes as well. So, I just think that exploratory nature of business takes a lot of guts to put yourself out there as, I'm the person who is doing this sportswear brand, I'm behind this. To then, put yourself out there and be like, I am the leader of a social media marketing agency, and this is what I'm known for. And you start to build a profile around that. And then I'm actually going to go and explore something else. And I think there's something in there that stops a lot of people from trying things, which is such a shame, because like really nobody else cares about our identity attached to like what we do. And we can actually change it as many times as we like. Like, there is absolutely nothing to hold on to. You have to explore.
Two things. First thing is, have you read the book 1 + 1 = 3? Such a great book.
No.
It's little anecdotes about how people have come from different backgrounds and how, or different people, and they come together, and then all this innovation happens because of all the different life experiences. And the second thing is, thank you for saying that. I feel like when I'm in that mode and kind of looking for opportunity, then you sort of get the wheels turning in terms of just realizing, oh, that's quite cool, or oh, watching what people are buying or why they're buying something. And so when I started the sportswear brand, I didn't tell anyone that I had started that for like 6 months. Like, I kept that a secret. It wasn't until like these packages started turning up at my flat that my housemates are like, what are you ordering? Like, what is going on? Like, I was so nervous about putting myself out there or failing. Like, I would just way rather slink into the background, no one really know what was going on, and have this sort of secret side hustle. And I still hear of people that actually successfully do this, but I did then share that eventually, and it was actually on accident, because I accidentally linked my personal Facebook to my Instagram, and I had like 20,000 followers at that stage or something, and you should have seen the messages of people being like, what, is that you? So I kept it on the very down low, and 100% that all came from a place of like, I'm just scared, like, is this a reflection of who I am? Like, do I even like these? Like, it was just so scary. And then the biggest learning for me was, I had a business partner who's still one of my besties with the second business in the agency, and she had seen how important it was to put yourself out there and have a personal brand. So like, she like dragged me to start the podcast that we had, and the impact of really putting yourself out there and just being shameless about it. But it feels shameless to you. And like, yeah, of course, there's going to be people who are going to talk about it or are going to think it's a little bit much, but that's actually all part of it, I think. And then once people see that you're successful and you're doing well, like they're not going to say that. I really actually respect creators and people on Instagram, because I think New Zealand and Australia have a real tall poppy syndrome when it comes to like putting yourself out there. And when there's not the social proof there already, like when people are just starting out or they're trying to do some comedy stuff or they're really, really getting out there, and they've got to be the ones that believe in themselves first. I really take my hats off to them, because once they get going, all well and good, but there was always a time when they had to be the only ones believing in themselves and getting the ball rolling and just doing it anyway.
I couldn't love this anymore. My partner, Will, says to me, actually, before I tell you what he says to me, I'll go back and I'll lay some context to that, because this very thing that you talk about, you know, that tiny percentage of people that will either internally or externally or implicitly or explicitly give you shit for putting yourself out there, you know, that small percentage of people that will do it, they can be such a huge roadblock to you mentally. Like just the thought and the fear that there's someone out there that might be like, I say this often, but like hanging shit on you in the group chats that you're not in, you know, like screenshot, look at this chick, like who does she think she's such, it's definitely been a part of me that has held me back, you know, that I would absolutely admit that I'm a big people pleaser. I will absolutely admit that I struggle with identity and I struggle with what people think about me. And, you know, particularly as for most of my career, I was a person, I was an identity, you know, I worked in radio and all my friends did, and that was me and that was my identity. So stepping outside of that to try anything new feels really, really scary. I love that you say words like you have to shamelessly promote yourself, because it is a journey. It's not easy to step into it and go, I'm going to shamelessly promote myself now. It's bit by bit and you get more comfortable. Now, as that journey goes on and you get yourself out there and you get time on your side, all good things in business take time, and you start to get a few wins on the board, this is the thing that Will says to me, because all of a sudden those people who were like quiet or unfollowed you or just stopped talking to you or probably hung shit on you, there they are. They're there popping up into the socials, because everyone loves to back a winner, don't they?
100%. Yeah. And we used to have a saying, Tash and I would be like, act as if we've got, you know, the followers or the business or the audience yet already, and we just say, oh, well, act as if, and we just sort of compartmentalize a little bit and sort of get on with it. But it is really hard. But at the same time, like, I guess that's the point.
You don't learn anything if it's easy, and that whole thing is a journey. You know, watching how people respond to people doing something new and in business as well is a really interesting journey. I think it's definitely taught me that, you know, I have regret now about seeing my friends try a new business and before I was doing it myself, not getting around them more and not like celebrating them more and, you know, sharing and telling everyone, because, you know, that sort of stuff is so important. You definitely get a newfound love for what it takes to personally build a business.
And I think the more you do it, then the more you attract the people who are really above the line, enthusiastic supporters as well. And I would say now that I don't know anyone who, I would never hang shit on anyone, and there's no one around me that would to me either. And you just end up aligning with people who are more your people and more positive in that way as well. So I guess it's just perhaps the very beginning.
Absolutely. Anything, right? Like we're shaking off that little snaky skin, like getting into our new skin. Listener can't see, but I'm actually shaking. So I want to get into, I guess, the development of the brand tone for Girls Get Off, because I can see naturally that you've got a beautiful ability to be able to identify purchasing insights, marketing insights, but also cultural insights in terms of what people are responding to. And you know, that definitely is a rare skill and a rare commodity and a learned one, I imagine. You find these things by just doing and thinking in a certain way. So I can imagine that the experience of pulling together the brand of Girls Get Off was probably really exciting and fun for you. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you approached it, but also the first few things you did to get it out there?
Well, firstly, funnily enough, when we decided to do this, we were like, let's just take all the branding from Humble Grape. So in terms of like the look and feel, we actually took exactly what the fonts and everything that we were going to have for the wine brand, and we just were like, let's just use it for the sex toys because it's super fun. I think the biggest thing for us has been around our like really strong do's and don'ts, and like figuring out where in the market we were going to sit compared to other sexual wellness brands. So I think there were people on the market who were doing a good job of the sort of aspirational. They had your more traditional, like, for example, they had lots of pictures of influencers like holding vibrators up to their face. Like, it was just, that's very like, I don't know, was it like 2020, 2021 marketing where people just took pictures on feed with product? And so we could see that was happening. And then we could also see there was a space for the real like woo-woo stuff. So you're talking like yoni eggs, crystals, like aligning your chakras and all of that. It's like, that's also winning in their department. So what we realized is we were like, the people that are growing the most on Instagram in terms of like influencers and so on are those that are being like real and relatable and a little bit of human, because that was sort of our angle too. And so we thought, if we can come in the middle, in between the woo, like there's the woo-woo over there and there's the aspirational on one end, let's come right in the middle and let's be real, relatable, and let's make it funny and use humor so that it takes away the uncomfortable feelings that are associated with this topic that's often really taboo. And when we decided we'll do stuff that's fun, we also had to have really clear guidelines around that, because I think there's a lot of jokes around this topic that aren't actually very helpful. So at the same time, there was like, we want it to be fun, but we also have this really strong belief that your like pleasure is your responsibility, and we're here to like empower women to learn more about themselves and then go and share that with their partners. So you won't hear us make jokes about like guys can't find the clit, for example, or you won't find we have a question in one of our brand documents. It's like, are we laughing with someone or are we laughing at someone? Because there's a very big difference between laughing with someone or at someone. Self-deprecating humor, sweet, that's funny. But if you're laughing at someone, not so funny. We also didn't want to be anti-male, because we felt like in this space, one of the things that had sort of turned us personally away from aligning sometimes was, whether it's true or not, sometimes it felt like males had sort of become, it was like they were the problem or the scapegoat, or just like stuff where these things might be true in some cases or in different situations. But at the end of the day, is that really helpful in helping people have their best sex life? No. So we're like, we're not going to be anti-male. We're just going to be fun and great. And also, that's not helpful for women's pleasure if their partner, whoever they are, feels like they don't really align with this like girls club, whereas if we've got guys buying for their partners and stuff, and I had one yesterday saying like, oh, great marketing, like blah, blah, blah. So it's like, if we can also win them over and win the partners over, then that makes it easier for everyone. So those are probably the things that we started with. And then the brand values, or the brand behaviors that we call them, have sort of built out and become a little bit more in depth. So there's things like, we like to shake it up. So we like to do things differently. We might do something like the dancing for free vibes. Once we did that, a lot of other people started doing the same thing. And so then we sort of switch it up and do something different. Or we might, we always keep it real, relatable, like confessions that we run every Sunday. People write in what they've been up to over the weekend. And again, we always keep it, we say boost the mood. So we keep it positive, and there's like heaps of fun stories in there. There's also a lot of content that might come through that might be talking about like cheating and so on. And like, while that may be a confession, that's not aligned with what we want people to get out of visiting our page. Like, we want it to be uplifting. We want it to be fun and exciting, like having sex in the car, like doing whatever. But in terms of like cheating or like that shock factor, although that would get us heaps of engagement, that's just not where we want to sit in the market. So we've got some like quite strong stances that we take on that sort of stuff too. And I think that it's hard to see, like you wouldn't know that from the outside, but yeah, that's something that we've worked really hard on internally.
I don't suppose you'd ever consider treating me to a cup of tea? Hear me out. If you love the show, you've probably heard me talk about how much of a labour of love it is creating it. And I do love it. And I really love to hear about how it's supporting you, and have big dreams for bringing you more content more often so we can keep growing our businesses together. But the reality is, as an independent podcaster, I bring you this content for free. So if you love the show and the content I create for you, perhaps you'd consider buying me a cuppa to show your support. There's a link in our show notes and in the info about the pod section that says support the show by buying me a cuppa. And that link will take you to the official Buy Me a Coffee website. If you haven't heard of it before, it's a fully legit third-party donation platform for creators where you can make a small donation, the cost of taking me out for a cuppa, because I don't drink coffee, via all the expected types of payment options. Or just head to buymeacoffee.com /unemployed pod. I appreciate you, amazing listener. Now let's get back into the chat. Yeah, it definitely does have the good mood vibe and the lighthearted vibe. And coming back to that, I think we talked about it earlier, maybe we talked about it off air, but coming back to that, putting women's pleasure in the spotlight and not making it something that lives in the dark. And I feel like, hanging shit on anyone else or, staying anywhere in the negative and anywhere in the dark doesn't really truly reflect that.
And like I say to people sometimes, I'm like, a lot of people and a lot of us have held so much shame around this, not really sure how to think. A lot of people didn't even get sex ed at school. They don't have an opinion of this topic that's been formed from anywhere positive necessarily, unless they do, or it's from porn or wherever they've gotten their information from. So it's a really fast and loose sort of idea that's floating around for a lot of people. And I think when we just help people relax, take it easy, make them laugh, that's the best gateway for people to then go oh, this actually isn't so weird after all. Or actually, I can see Joe and Viv's faces on there. So this isn't like when I go to the local sex shop and there's someone who doesn't look or sound like me serving me at the counter, I can just normalizes is the word that we use. Yeah, bring it out from the dark, as you say, and just, it's what bad things come from talking about pleasure more. That's what I say.
Well, absolutely. It should be an ethos for life, right? If we just have a bit of a lull and take it a bit more lighthearted and make everything relatable. And, there's just so many lessons there for progressing with so many things in life, but particularly business. So can you talk to me a little bit about, okay, so the process, and I find this, deeply fascinating with product-based businesses, but the process of finding the products that you're actually happy with. So, as you say, there's setting up all the brand tone and the marketing and what you want to achieve for the brand. And then you've got the product that has to deliver on the brand promise as well. So what's that journey been like, finding the right products for you?
There's been a lot of product testing.
Yes, there has.
Look, there's been honestly, there's been lots of product testing. There's also been just starting the business, and one of my favorite things to do is just observe, talk to people, ask people questions. I'm always asked, even at events and expos now, if I have a conversation with someone and they start talking to me about how they sound like they use sex toys, I always ask them, what's your current favorite, or what do you use all the time? So from just noticing what people were enjoying, I think it's over 70% of women need, or vulva owners need, clit stimulation to have an orgasm. That was a pretty good place to start for our first toy. And the type of toy that we started with, the Missy, so it's an air pulsing sensation, that was going viral in the States, and it was kicking off in New Zealand and Australia as well. So it's more about figuring out what people really like. And then the toys that we've got coming out soon, they are based on we're not trying to reinvent the wheel in terms of products. We make products that are better than what's on the market, but we're also not a product-centric business in terms of, we're not competing against the latest technology out of Berlin doing VR headsets, or there's these crazy things that, the list goes on, right? So that's not where we're competing, and that's not where we're going to be competitive, because we're not huge extreme product designers. But where we do compete is the community, and where we do win is community, making people feel a part of something, the marketing, making them laugh, and then we also have an excellent product. So yeah, that's been the process for us. It's been marketing first and giving the people what they want, and then we're the ones to get the message out there.
I am imagining you, and tell me if I'm getting this totally wrong, but there must have been a stage where you're right, so, we found a product that's really working really, really well, that's going to fit with this. And so that's enabling us to hit the market, that's enabling us to get consumer feedback, that's enabling us to grow. So there must be a time where you're all right, I've got to Google who makes vibrators to order, who can help me design the perfect, whatever product that you're creating and make this live. What was that like, finding the support that you need technically to develop product?
Initially, we went off suppliers that we'd found on Alibaba, so that's super easy. And you can just, it's kind of trial and error. I did the same thing for sportswear, and often we might send a few suppliers the same instructions, see who comes back with good samples, or see who's got great English and all those sorts of things. And what else have we done? Just Google sometimes as well. When we got our book printed, we ended up having to Google that and figure that out ourselves. And then in terms of product design, we actually had a stage where we thought, I think I've caught myself in this trap many times before. And I think, you're like, oh, I don't know anything. Like, oh God, I must need someone more of an expert to help me. And we actually paid a lot of money to get like an actual industrial designer to help us out with one of the toys. And we actually quickly realized that we didn't need one, that actually we were working with suppliers where we could actually just get our designers, like we would use, like Joe does most of the design work with Hannah, because I say I'm creatively challenged, but so they'll make like physical Play-Doh or molds to see how it like looks, feels in the hand, and then they'll just do drawings, and then it's ultimately up to the supplier anyway, because they've got to figure out what motor is going to fit in the toy and so on. So it's actually a lot simpler than you might think. And that also what we thought, because we thought, oh, we don't know what we don't know, we'll get some experts in, but it actually wasn't actually to our advantage. So I guess that's probably going to be different for everyone, but I would say that don't underestimate keeping it simple as well.
God, that could just go for so many things. I had an incredible woman, Mia, chat on the pod with me recently, and has an incredible business around campaigns, campaigns marketing versus always on. And we were talking about course marketing for that one. And so she uses this term that I borrowed from her, just like the 7-figure megaphoners. So these are the experts that you see in socials, and you've got that person in that sense, the industrial designer who, has shown up and be like, I know all of this stuff. That's quite normal. But then you also have, for us as business people today, like we're constantly being told that I know how to do this thing. I know how to do this thing. If you just have this piece of expertise from me, you will be better. And the self-doubt is such a killer, because I don't know if it's just a female thing, and please excuse me, listener who identifies as male, who is listening to this and is like, please shut up. It's not just a female thing, but it's like that age old, like if a man is applying for a job and he has 50% of the qualifications, he'll still apply, but we have to have like 99 in order to feel confident about it. So it could be that element coming into it, but just that self-doubt that comes into taking these steps and being like, okay, how can I get someone to teach me what I need to know so I feel confident to move forward? I think there's a real there's just a real core lesson in there for knowing the right time to hire an expert, knowing the right time to like what you need from them. Like it might actually be 3 or 4 tips and a bit of courage.
100%. And I think there's obviously a time to hire an expert. I think I sit in a funny space between, I want to take shortcuts. So I want someone to just like tell me how they've done it. And then I'm also sometimes the secret is there is no secret. Like you've just got to go and do it. So I think the thing that I've probably learned the most is just taking advice from the right people, aka those who've done what you want to do before and done it successfully. And that to date has worked pretty well. Now we've got a mentor who built a really large sex toy company in Australia, like all those sorts of things that are just like, that you're taking actual experience shares as opposed to advice, which is like quite huge, rather than just someone who's maybe started like a business in a different niche. I mean, there's still value that can come from that, but I think, there's something to be said by just shortcutting by asking someone who's done it before.
Really love to hear that. I think so many of us think that somebody who has been in a like industry is not going to be willing and open to support and to mentor somebody else's growth. Can you share, I know as much as you're comfortable with, share like what that experience was like asking that person to become your mentor? Were there any nerves around that? Was there any unsurety around that?
So I met them through like an e-commerce conference that I'd been to. So and this is a huge business. This is huge. They've been going for like 20 years. So when I'd actually introduced myself, met them, started building the relationship anyway, technically they are a competitor, but they're also not, because they didn't really have their own brand. And they didn't house ours either. So at the same time, sure, they're a competitor, but they're also kind of not. And it's just good to build relationships with people. And then because I kept in touch, I also had the in word that they were leaving this company. So when they were leaving, they also said to me, hey, look, I'm going to do some mentoring. And I said, we would absolutely love to be your clients. So it's probably a lesson there in just building some relationships. And look, I still network. Like I'll have lunch with Lucy from Normal, who's like another sex toy or sexual wellness company based in Sydney as well. So like I do just like to touch bases with people in industry. And I just think that like relationships, I love chatting with people and making new friends, but it always sort of pays off and you just help each other out,
Yeah, you have to go into these things without any notions at all, do you? It's like, I mean, who doesn't want to just talk about the things that they're passionate about? And business, whatever we're building, we're hugely passionate about. Like, I have so many podcast friends. People, I just go and, we don't necessarily just talk about the industry. We just talk, or our own products or anything like that. It's just nice to connect with people, and you just never know when you're going to need each other.
I genuinely believe that like a rising tide lifts all ships. Is that the saying? And there's plenty of examples where competing brands have like got pressed together because they're fighting for a certain message, or there's plenty of opportunities there to do cool things. Or just like, I would talk to a friend in the States, for example, that designs sex toys for other vibrator brands, and she was giving me the inside word and some like things that were happening over there. So it's all helping everyone, and there's enough slice of the pie for everyone.
Oh, absolutely. I love that advice. I would love to talk a little bit about your approach to financing through launches, through growth phases, and not necessarily the fine details. I mean, again, you can go into whatever you like, but just how you've approached the process of financing your business through the ups, the downs, through forecasting, through confidence building in that space.
So for this business, initially we didn't even take a wage for the first 6 months or so, and then we started to take some money out of it. Our accountant said to us, you guys are going to need some cash. We're like, what do you mean? We've got heaps of money in our bank account. Classic year 2, couple of big hiccups and some cash flow dramas. Oh, what do you know? We need some cash. We've had our fair share of what I remember calling Joe, I'm like, I think we're having a crisis. Ask your business group. Tell them we're in a crisis. They're like, you're not in a crisis. You've got plenty of revenue. Just like, you need to make sure there's profit and this are your outgoings and all these sorts of things. So yeah, well, look, we've had our fair share of cash and profit learnings, shall we say. But the way that we've funded things have been, bootstrapping. And then recently we got a loan. So we got a loan from an outfit called Tractor Ventures. So they're really great, and they are a fan of non-dilutive funding. So for context, the bank won't even give us an overdraft. So the old bank I used to be with the agency, I could ring them and be like, I can't pay my staff this week because my cash flow is in a bit of a mess. Can you give me an overdraft? I need 10 grand. And they will just, put that on my account. At the bank we're with right now, wouldn't even give us an overdraft. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, we did 7 figures in the first year, plenty of profit. I'm like, you can't even give us like a 10 grand overdraft. Safe to say we're moving banks. We also couldn't get loans or trade finance. So we tried going through banks. We tried going through brokers. They won't look at us because we didn't have enough years of financials, and we also don't have any like houses or anything like that. So Tractor was great because they do it based off revenue, and it's unsecured. So it doesn't matter that we don't have assets and so on. In terms of assets, I don't know, I've got a vibrator collection, that's about it. So I don't even have a car they could take. So yeah, that's sort of how we funded it. And look, getting investment is not off the cards, but we also at the moment are like, well, we've got good advice and we've got good experience shares coming from people with experience, and we've got some cash now as well, which is funding the growth. So we will need cash at a stage in the future, I'm sure, but we're also very focused on profit now as well. So being profitable, I don't think that's necessarily the path that everyone takes. Some people go the no profit, heaps of revenue and try and grow that way and get market share, and that's like a different approach. But for like sanity's sake, profit's a big part of what we do. So yeah, does that answer your question? I think that's probably all the funding things, and we do pay ourselves now, but we didn't just at the start. I think that's pretty common for most people.
Yeah, it's an exciting experience to be able to actually put yourself on a payroll. I am connected with Gary Williams from Tractor on LinkedIn, and is probably, I'm actually going to send him this episode once it goes live, probably just one of the most enjoyable posters.
He's so funny and he's so quick, isn't he?
Very, very quick. But I've been keeping an eye on Tractor Ventures and just wanting to understand more about their business and how they operate. And I just think there's some cool humans working there. So that's really, really interesting to hear and see how it's applying practically to a business such as yours. It's really, really interesting and so many key areas there. And I really love the way that you talk about profitability, versus market share, the part that prestige pricing has to play in your business, and your positioning through pricing as well, and making the decision about whether or not it's like low inventory, high yield, or like whatever the opposite is of that I can't think of in the moment, just turning around over as much as you can. Listener gets it. Turning over as much as you can to, like you say, take market share and just be like a dominant voice. Like those are all active decisions, but all active decisions that I imagine are happening so much through the growth for you and figuring out like what is the best path for us. It was really insightful.
Yeah. And I like Tractor's been awesome. I think like the amount of founders I've pushed their way, because there's so many people in that situation where they don't have cash themselves, all their cash is already in the business, and they also don't have all the funding options that are available to others. They have really hit the nail on the head there in terms of need in the market. And yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, there's other businesses in our category that are doing like the market share thing, or they've like outspending each other, and that's a really interesting approach. But they've also got cash because they've got investment and stuff. So I guess it's just different for everyone. And I think we went down the path of like creating pitch decks and so on, but there was also a realization that we were like, oh, this is going to take a lot of time, and we're just going to essentially be marketing ourselves and taking time away from marketing the business and selling vibes at the end of the day while we're like out there pitching to everyone. So yeah, that's a decision that we made.
What's keeping you up at night at the moment?
Oh my God. That's so funny you say that, because whenever I get stressed, I normally wake up about 2 or 3 a.m., which is apparently when your serotonin is at the lowest. So you should write things down and then go back to sleep, because we all know that that's why they seem like bigger problems at the time. What's keeping me up at the most? I think for me, I've got some pretty ambitious goals for 2024, which aren't out of the question, but we do need to really pull finger and get our profits out of early next year. So I think at the moment, that's actually not, do you know what? That's the surface issue. But the real issue right now is I'm worried that I'm not going to be fully rested by the time that I come back from break. Like, I think when you start the business, you've got heaps of energy, endless energy, work 24/7, it's all good. And then I'm just like, my expectations of the energy that I want from myself is quite high. And I'm like, what if I'm not rested? And then this creates an ongoing cycle of, worried about it. And then maybe waking up at 5:30 going, I need to be rested. So it's like, at the moment, I'm a little bit creating my own misery. With that said, I also know that anytime something is painful, it normally means something good comes out of it. So at the moment that we've been feeling like a little bit burnt out, Joe's exactly the same. We always say like, it actually helps you weed out what's really important and what's not important. And so I think for us, we've taken check and going, what are the things that we really need to focus on next year? Because if you don't have 110%, then you end up being better off anyway. It pushes you towards the things that matter most.
Yeah, you've really got me thinking with a bit of that. We talked before we hit record about our abilities when we've got a lot going on to not rest but to distract and like disassociate from whatever it is that's going on. And that I just think that's just such a common experience for anybody building any level of business, even if you're micro business, like all the way through to the top end. It's like, what you need to do and you really want to do it. Like, you deeply feel it. Like, I really want to smash all these ideas. I want to get these all out there. I want to do 50 pieces of content. I've got so many ideas. Like, I've got so much I want to achieve. And then it's like just something in your brain and body stops you. And usually the barrier between that is, like I was saying to you, I will be right in the middle of writing something, a piece of content, like really, focus. And then all of a sudden I'm like 5 minutes deep into an Instagram scroll. I'm like, how the fuck did I get here? And that distraction ability that we have to like hide away from and never purely rest. Like, I just think that is such an ongoing challenge for us as businesses. Also, I actually interviewed someone yesterday and we talked a little bit about this, and like, how exercise is so important for our brains, obviously. Like, we've got to do, I know as soon as I let that go, I'm like cooked. There's nothing creative coming out of my brain. But he said to me, is like, the thing that I do to kind of keep myself in check is I go work out and I have someone tell me what to do. And I think that's really great for like the entrepreneurial mind to be rested for a minute, to have someone talk to you and make you go through emotion of doing something so that you actually do let yourself switch off. Because like when I'm deep scroll, I'm like, cool, I've just seen like 15 interesting pieces of content that I've saved to watch later when I've quote unquote got headspace, or I've just signed up to 2 webinars that are scheduled now in my diary that I'm not going to watch, and I'm going to tell myself I'll watch the replay of. And I've just seen 5 pieces of content that are interesting trends that maybe I could use as inspiration for my own. And I'm like, well, fuck, that's not a rest. Yeah. Like there's just nothing that's restful about that.
It's so funny you say that. So I did a marathon in April, and when I was training for that, I had the realization that for so long I'd let work become the number one priority, that I'd done like a little bit of exercise here and there, like, a few times a week, nothing crazy, but actually having that running, and especially like long weekend runs, running with my mates, game changer. I couldn't believe how well I coped with stress. And I remember thinking, don't stop doing this. What did I do this year? Stopped running and just did like walking. I'm like, that for me is not the same. And so I went to Byron for a pre-break, and I took my knitting. Like, I'm not a knitter, but now I am. I'm like, took knitting, bought some crochet hooks. I'm like, I'm going to crochet some stuff for my new friend's baby. Like, tell you what, I can't crochet and I have nothing to show for it after 3 hours on YouTube. That's a different story. But I literally had to have my phone on Do Not Disturb. I'm like crocheting, and I find that when I'm actually unplugging, it'll be all right for a day. Day 2 or 3, I'll start wigging out a little bit, and I'll be like, and it's just like a little thing that happens. And then on the Sunday, I actually went for a run in the morning, and it was like a little plod, and it felt like a sauna in Byron Bay. But I got to the end of the day on Sunday, and I was like, you haven't been worried all day. And I was like, and just like that, we've realized through experience again that you need to do some more running. So I think that was also a learning that came out of my little trip, but some good, really something that really occupies the brain, like trying to learn how to crochet or something really random like that. I used to go to Pilates classes because I was so new to it. I didn't know what I was doing, that for a full hour, all I had to think about was, or all I could think about was like, oh, just like little pulses and like burning and awfulness. But like, at least it was a mental break.
Legit, my experience with Pilates, that's the thing that I found this year, and is the thing that I'm like, I will go like 3 times a week is like my thing I try to hit. And yeah, that you actually can't think about anything. Also, like, fuck, what's spring? Like, what's this? Like, why am I in this movement? Why does moving 4 millimeters up and down make me want to die? Yes, I totally relate to that. So I do hope you get some rest, but I think we all have to work on that actively and become more self-aware of that as we go through the process. No silver bullet, but it's just like in this gig, you kind of have to fuck up a bunch and realize you're not feeling well and you're not doing well in order to figure out the measures that make you do better. It is a marathon, so you're clearly in the right exercise frame of mind as well as business frame of mind for this gig.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for, yes, take time to rest, listen to your body, and sometimes there's days you just need to like watch movies and do nothing, and hey, I'm very good at that. But at the same time, there's something to be said for this like pleasure pain vibe. I think there's like, we're living in heated homes, and we're all very like comfortable, and if there's not that like level of like pain and being uncomfortable, then it actually does us a bit of a disservice. I mean, we all know that everyone's getting into ice baths, but it's sort of the same concept, that unless we do have a little bit of that pain and like getting through stuff, yeah, I think that helps a lot, and it's a necessary evil.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Viv, you have shared so much gold insight for me and for the listener on your business building experience. And I don't think I'll be alone in saying I can't wait to see where it grows to and what else you do in a few years' time. I'm sure there's already ideas kicking around for like the next thing. Because like once you pop, you can start. But it's a real gift to give as well, to give a bit more of a real reality insight into building a business, all with the aim to help more of us do more of it and stick with it and know that our experiences are super normal. It's a big gift to give to your fellow business building community. So in return, how can the listener and I support you to hit your goals?
Amazing. Well, check us out on Instagram. It's @girlsgetoff, no spaces. Type it in exactly like that, because Instagram normally shadow bans us and you won't find us otherwise. We also have a podcast, Girls Get Off. We've got a Facebook group called Girls Get Off Uncensored, which I would highly recommend. And my personal Instagram is Viv Conway _ So get connected if you like and be entertained. But thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's been a blast, and I'm so happy I got to meet you.
Oh, me too. I'm going to make sure to have the links to all of those amazing things in the show notes. I probably will I'll put your Instagram first because it really is highly enjoyable, but immediately followed by the podcast because you all know how much I love a podcast. And I feel like yours is going to be especially excellent. So I'll make sure to have the links in the show notes so listen, go get around it, support each other, go get some pleasure in your life. So Viv, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.